as much as politics is politics, and our political culture is always reading with propaganda and the winner takes all mentality. Now is the time to set a new tone, and now is the time for all of us to also play that role as citizens, as media, as civil society, as private sector. We want to be measured in our communications, at least in the next couple of months and years to come, so that we can address issues of disunity and move from what unifies all of us. Nobody wants poverty, nobody wants bad education, nobody wants bad roads. So let's unify around those issues, and let's leave aside our ethnicity and our religious alignments, such as so that Nigeria can win.
But from what you've heard so far, Mr. Ibisi, in the run-up, you said so in your answer, you talked about the toxicity of the environment. It was particularly toxic because, again, you had several candidates this time. It was not the traditional two-horse race that the country had been used to, up until now. There were more people involved in the race, and then there were more young people whose temperament in terms of looking at people in terms of how you treat when people disagree with you, how you respond to people's disagreement with you, and all of that. We witnessed all of that, particularly the use of social media. So when you talk of strategic communications, just like Prof did, again, the people who need to be spoken to, many people will argue, are not in the traditional communication model. They are on these social media where sometimes, in fact, many times, truth is usually, not present. They live in a bubble and they speak to like minds. So someone who is not in that bubble may find it difficult to be able to reach out to them. And the generation of the president-elect, I'm not too sure, understands, this communication model. But perhaps it is priority that they must learn, because that's where the likelihood of their biggest challenges will be.
I mean, I totally agree with you. And one thing we must remind the president-elect is, now that he has been elected, he will be abused the more by this generation. How his team is now able to shape the narrative. Right? He said it. He said, "I have heard you. All right. I'm listening to you." Right. So in terms of that listening, social media will then be that space where he has to do more social listening. Because again, there are chances when you are a leader. The chances that people around you might not necessarily have the capacity to tell you the truth to your face. So if someone will now have to set up a team that can do social listening for him on social media. He had said that he's the most abused and he doesn't get on social media anymore in one of his campaign conversations. But now he has to find a way of getting on social media. He has to listen to this generation, because this generation, yes, they are impatient, but what they are also impatient about are issues that those that have been ahead of them have been impatient about as well. They want good education. They want internet that is fast and affordable. They want to be able to have decent jobs. These are aspirations that all of us would want. So communicating with them would mean that, like I've said, citizens' communication has to be prioritized. But in prioritizing that, you must also use methods and tools that allows you to be able to speak directly to them. Yes, they are on social media. How do we communicate government policies to them? How do we tell them the truth about what is happening in government? How are we proactively disclosing? Of course, understanding that they will be interested in what they are interested in, but cultivating them to pay attention to government, to pay attention to policies that affect them, is the role of government, is the role of agencies within government, and that is why we have to prioritize the role of the National Orientation Agency. We have to prioritize the role of the Ministry of Information as well. Those that will be handling the president's communication as his main thing, they must be professionals who can handle citizens' communication in ways that everybody will get it and get it right. The language has to be right. The countering the narrative also has to be there. There must be no gap between what government is doing and what citizens should know. Yes, let citizens now decide for themselves whether they want to trust this government. The trust also would then mean that if I've said by 1 p.m. I would speak to you, then 1 p.m. on dot speak to me. But if you're not speaking to me 1 p.m. on dot, tell me why you're not speaking to me and tell me a convenient time you're going to speak to me. When things happen, you need a president that will communicate. So you don't want to listen to aides this time around. You want these crisis management. You want to see the president talking to you and telling you these are the issues. Honestly, this is how we are planning to address them. If anything changes, I will come back to you and tell you what has changed and how again we are addressing those. I think this is going to be an interesting 4 year. I hope that there are a lot of lessons that we have picked from the last 16, 20 years that we've been in this game of democratic journey. But then we can't afford not to communicate with the young people. They are the largest population. Some of us were once young, all right, and we had their temperament. So let's not put that temperament as something that is necessarily bad. Of course, and when we were all growing, we started learning that we now need to pay attention to issues more. We now need to listen more. We now need to care more. They are also on that journey. But in that journey, we must meet them where they are. And that means targeting them with the right set of communications and addressing the issues that they have.
Mr. UBC said, young people, they're the largest population. Professor Adibe, what do you make of the showing? The number of people who, at the end of the day, collected the PVCs and actually came out to vote?
Yeah, that remains a mystery because a lot of excitement was created. And we are not just talking about the discrepancy between registered voters and those who came to vote. We are talking about discrepancy between accredited voters. I mean, number of people who collected their PVC. That is to say, those who have expressed readiness to vote and those who did not vote. So we have to look at other elements to find out what happened. And I don't have the right answer. We can only surmise some guesses whether the logistic problems created by either, or let me not use the word created, which INEC did not manage well. The extent to which they affected people's enthusiasm to vote. I know it's in a number of polling units where people stayed for up to 10 hours, and some people were asked to go back and come back again. I mean, how many people can really afford to stay for 5, 6, 7 hours in a queue? So these are some of the problems. Sometimes there were people who stayed in a queue for a long time, and they're only to find out their names were not in that particular polling unit. It was a serious problem, and I believe it must have played a role. And there are other issues like pockets of violence that I don't blame INEC because it's the responsibility of the security agencies. Deliberate voter suppression in some areas, fear of violence in some areas. These are probably elements that, played a role. We had expected huge turnout. I can understand, for example, relative voter apathy in states or areas where they do not have any horse in the race. But in areas like the southwest, southeast, and at least the northeast where our Atiku comes from, we expected huge voter turnouts. And what happened? And this is something we also need to unravel. And people who are alleging that there is a big discrepancy between what was announced and what they have. This is an opportunity for us to interrogate them when they get to court, or if they want to go to court. But something somewhere along the line happened. We don't really know I don't really know for now. But we have to, it's an issue that deserves serious interrogation.
Professor Adibe, I want to stay with you and examine the issue of the other candidates. Now, we've talked about what the winner, as declared by INEC, needs to do and needs to start doing almost immediately. But then Now, the other candidates. I've read some pieces, even between yesterday and today, where people were saying, they need to also make their presence felt, particularly to talk with their supporters, who are the supporters who listen only to them and not to any authority figures on what next, and how to proceed with what next. You have said that, neither of them, that's Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Mr. Peter Obi, or even Alhaji Rabiu Kwankwaso, has any propensity or any predilection to violence or violent outcomes. But, as you pointed out rightly, that cannot be said of their supporters. So at this point, they have a very difficult task. They have expressed grievance, but how to go about not tamping down that grievance, but tamping down the reaction, while going through the process. I mean, this is something that is a conundrum, isn't it?
One good thing that, one thing is that I saw the parties, the leading parties, opposition parties, the PDP and the Labour Party. I saw their press conference and there was no indication. I think if anything was to be surmised from that press conference, it was that they would use the judicial process, to seek redress. And one of the things that happens when you take your case in this kind of, to the courts is that there's ample time for people, people who came out to protest peacefully. That itself helps because it's ventilating their grievances. It tends to be very cathartic. And people who do that, we say, after a period of time, quite a number of them will tend to calm down. Especially if the messaging from the candidate that was declared the winner was not triumphalist or trying to mock them. Of course, we don't expect everyone to accept the outcome. Some, even when whoever was declared, if whoever was declared the winner, just be assured that stones, figuratively speaking, should be thrown at the person. It comes with the territory. The issue is, how do you handle them? How do you handle the stones that are thrown at you? And that will go a long way in shaping also the response of the generality of the people. One of your colleagues mentioned that the young people are active in social media, but not necessarily in traditional media, not so much in traditional media. The truth is that there tends to be what they call convergence. There's a convergence of the different media types, online, audio, and print. So most of the traditional media houses have also their news in online and in the social media formats. So whatever is done in the traditional media percolates through that media form. You can also use social media to try to engage the youth or the young people that are very active. But the communication mode doesn't have to be adversarial, even when they are criticizing your principle. It is to engage them with logic and know when to concede. And I think that should be something we should be aiming at. One of the ways we can try to unify this country is to run away from that form of adversarial mode of communication, which characterized the Buhari regime, and which, in my own opinion, is one of the reasons why people tend to say that the country has never been as divided as we have under the regime.
It's interesting, Prof, when you talk about the issues the way you are right now, mentioning them. And Lani asked you this question along the line of what the other political parties who are equally Nigerians should do. And I think, we've spoken largely to the things that the president-elect and his team should be doing now. But what conciliatory position in the interest of Nigeria, and I like the fact that you closed with that in your last few comments, what would be your proposition to them in that conciliatory function, particularly from among their representatives. Just as you said, that press conference that held, I mean, you also mentioned the fact that there are those who are not just going to like the idea, and irrespective of whatever you say, they're going to hold on to their position. But what conciliatory communication do you suggest in the interest of Nigeria should be coming from everyone of every interest in this country? We've had some speak, but particularly the political parties. Some of them are against, some of them sat there while Professor Mahmoud Yakubu was making that declaration this morning. So what would be your proposition to them? We've spoken a lot about the president-elect. How about other Nigerians who at this time are also not happy?
Yeah, I think also when the presidential candidates, I mean, I focus on the major presidential candidates, not because I don't recognize the efforts of the other candidates, I do. But in terms of the critical mass, I tend to think that they are major concern for now. Yes, they should issue statements. I think I read something from Itobi. They should issue more elaborate statements, asking their supporters to keep calm. I think some of the supporters need to have the hope that they are pursuing some of those grievances. I'm not sure many of them would like to hear that, okay, we have accepted everything and all this. So there must be a way of letting the supporters know